So right now you're taking a look at a preview of what we're going to do by the end of this ragdoll tutorial. We're going to create some ragdolls with both humans and animals, and then we're going to kill those characters and enable their ragdolls and then throw them around the scene as you would. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and create a new project. I'm using 2020.3. I try to use LTS or long-term service Unity versions, but I don't think it really matters which version you use as long as it has the Unity Ragdoll Wizard. And I don't know when that came out, but I'm sure it came out at least around Unity 5.6, you know, so that's, I think that was 8 or more years ago. So if you're using Unity 2020, you should be good, 2018 even. I know I've been using Ragdolls ever since I started Unity, and that was Unity 5.6. So it doesn't matter what the version is, just go ahead and you can use this in an existing project. I'm creating a new project just so that you guys don't think I'm a dick and like creating this with a bunch of new packages or whatever. I think the packages that I bring in are going to be maybe TextMesh Pro, probably the UI package. I am going to use assets. I'm going to use assets because I can't remember if they still have Ethan provided to you, and I don't like the new character controller. So I'll be using assets. But when I use assets, obviously I'm going to tell you where I got them from and provide the links in the description. So let's get into this. All right, so you can basically use whatever character you want for this as long as it's got a skeleton set up. But I'm going to go ahead and go to Mixamo here, go to the character section and grab this like zombie war hero general guy. I'm going to download that as an FBX for Unity, and I'm going to make sure that he's in the T-pose so that there's no conflict with my animations and stuff like that. So once that's finished downloading, I'm just going to drag it from my downloads folder right into the project plane. I'm in my project, my downloads folder. I'm dragging that straight into the project. I minimize, and if I drag him into the scene, he's got no materials on him. So you saw that he had a cool uniform and all that, but he's got no uniform if you just drag him straight in. So we have to go to the materials section of that war zombie, and then we have to change that to use external materials, and then press apply, and then we'll fix all the errors that come with that, and you'll see that it generates some textures and some materials for you, and then when you drag and drop him into the scene, he actually looks like he did on Mixamo. Creating a ragdoll in Unity is really simple. If you have a character that has this sort of skeleton, okay, so you'll see that they have where they're rendering the character, and then you'll see that they have the skeleton where it's got the hips and the spine and all that stuff. Now, in order to create a ragdoll, all we have to do is go to game object and then 3D object, and it has a ragdoll wizard. Okay, this is built for humans, but there are sometimes some animals which we can use. For example, I know that Polyperfect has a pig that has basically the same skeleton as a human. Okay, so this will work on animals as well, and I'll show you guys that in a minute. So let's go ahead and set this up. The pelvis is the same thing as the hips, so that's our root right there, and then the left hips, that's our left upper leg here. We're going to go ahead and set up the left side first, so I'm going to unfold the left leg, and left leg should be about the knee, so you can zoom in and kind of see where those joints are, and that's perfect. So left foot will work for the left foot, and then we'll go ahead and do the same thing for the right leg. So we get the right upper leg for our right hips, right knee, or excuse me, right leg for right leg, and then for right knee, and then right foot for right foot. Perfect. Now in the arms, usually you have to unfold the spine, and you'll go and find this stuff under the shoulder. Now the shoulder is pretty inside, it's more around the pecs. So what we want to do is unfold the shoulder, and we'll grab them from the joint at the shoulder there. glenohumeral joint here, and then we'll go down to the elbow and put that onto the left elbow. So you might see names that are different from what you see in the Ragdoll Wizard, but if you look at where the joints are, you can see that they're in the correct place. So let's grab that right arm and the right elbow, and then the middle spine is usually spine 2, so it's about here. I think will be good. Alrighty, and now we need the head. All right, and that will go from the neck. We'll unfold the neck and find the head. There's the head, perfect. I give these guys, I think it starts off at 20, but I usually give these guys 50 mass. I think it's distributed fairly evenly as it would be in a human. I always give the strength 1. I never know what it means, and I don't know what flip forward means. So if you guys want to look that up through Unity, good for you guys. I still fail to understand it, but this will work, okay? So let me see if the rigid bodies are using gravity. So I think if I go ahead and what's going on here? Whatever. If I go ahead and press play here, so I'm going to grab my camera and I'm going to turn it on, and I'm going to go to game object and align with view, so that when I press play, I'm going to see my guy. I'm going to see, I think, that he falls down, he collapses into a ragdoll. So that's perfect. All right, so that's exactly what we're looking for. What we also want to do is make sure that there isn't a lot of self-intersecting collision. So what I mean by that is if we unfold those character joints, you'll start to see, I'm going to go into orthographic mode. If I click this cube here, I go into orthographic mode, and I can see the capsule colliders, the colliders that this Ragdoll Wizard has created. So I'm going to start with my left leg here. And I'm going to go ahead and use the collider wizard thing to edit these capsule colliders so that they're smaller basically, and so that they don't self-intersect. Like you'll see that these two are pretty much intersecting, and it'll make for weird ragdoll, like it'll create bouncing basically. Like you'll see some weird stuff happen if it's self-colliding. So I'm going to do that for both of the legs. Make sure it looks good here. Okay, going to the right upper leg, and I'm going to do that for both of the legs. So let's go ahead and put that there and there. Perfect. About where his knee ends. And do the same here. Now, if I go back to the upper leg, I can see that there's a bit of intersection right here. So I'm going to take a little bit of the lower leg off here. Right there is probably fine. Okay, now I want to check out that the hips are good. So open that box collider. It looks like we might have intersection here. Let's make that a little bit smaller, and the chest might be intersecting. We want to look at that from the side because a lot of times these are rotated. In this case, it's not. But I don't want his collider to be too fat, because later I'm going to put some hitboxes on here, and it's going to be important on those hitboxes to detect where collisions with rays are happening, so that you're actually shooting at the hips and not like for example, if I shot here, I would get a hit even though his body's not there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and make that narrower. All right. Let's go to spine 2, which is where this box collider is. And you can see some weird colliders here. I'm going to go ahead and make this way bigger. All right, so you can see some weird colliders here for his arms. I'm going up to his arm, left arm. I'm going to expand that one. I think that works. And I'm going to go down to his elbow and make this way thinner, and perhaps not go all the way to his hand. Okay, let's do that. The same with the right arm. Comes into the body a little bit more. Don't give it so much air. And then with the right forearm, this needs to be massively reduced, and perhaps take away a little bit off the hands. Let's look at him from above just so that we're not completely breaking it. Make sure that we don't have any self-collision. Oh, that's really hard to, okay, perfect. So you can see that they're not colliding with each other. That's good. Last thing is the head. So let's go to the head and make sure that that cylinder is actually, that sphere's in the right place. So we can lower that. It's not super necessary there. We can just do that with the gizmos. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, that works for me. That works for me. We're gonna go ahead and save the scene, and then we're gonna press play one more time to see if anything changes. Probably not. Oh, I feel like that's a better, we're gonna pop a ball in here. So I'm gonna put a sphere in here, put a cube actually, and put a rigid body on that. And then I'm gonna make that rigid body a little heavier. And I'm gonna move that around so I can move my guy around. Okay. All right, so yeah, that's pretty decent, I would say. That was a pretty decent fall. So that's good. All right, now I'd say it's pretty important to have the actual rigid body controller. So I'm gonna go ahead and create a folder here for my prefabs, just to keep everything tidy, and then I'm gonna create a folder for scripts. I know this is a small project, but I still like to do this kind of stuff, just get in the habit of being tidy. All right, so I put my zombie into the prefabs, and then I'm gonna go into the scripts folder and create a new C# script. Alrighty, and what I'm going to do is name that, let's just call this Ragdoller. Okay, that which ragdolls. All right. So open, wait for compilation to finish, and then open your Ragdoller script. This should be an empty script with the basic Unity callbacks. So what we're gonna do is we need two functions. We're gonna go ahead and make these public functions because we might want to activate this Ragdoll with via the inspector. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and write some pseudocode here. So I'm just gonna call this enable the Ragdoll. And usually you wanna have opposite actions, okay? So if you have an enable action, then you have a disable action. So I'm just gonna copy that and call it disable the Ragdoll. So what does that mean? It means that so we have this Ragdoll, all right? So we have this guy that's got a skeleton, and on his skeleton, there's a bunch of rigid bodies and colliders and stuff like that. The colliders we need, all right? The colliders have to stay, they have to be enabled, all right? I think it's important to have those enabled for when we do, like shooting and stuff like that. We want to be able to hit those colliders for hitboxes, so we can keep those enabled. But the rigid bodies, they have these two super important functions, which are use gravity and is kinematic. So if I go ahead and type in the hierarchy in the search bar, I can type T for type, then put a colon, and then put rigid body, and that's not case sensitive. So I'll see all the rigid bodies that we created with our Ragdoll. And what I want to do is go ahead and select all of those, and then disable use gravity, and then enable is kinematic. And what we're going to see here when we press play is that nothing happens, okay? So if I change that from is kinematic to not is kinematic, and then use gravity, the Ragdoll is then enabled, okay? So that's essentially what we're doing with this script, the Ragdoller script. Now, you might say, okay, well, what was the point of doing anything with is kinematic? When we enable is kinematic, it means that it's not going to detect collisions with other rigid bodies. So say, for example, let's go ahead and take off use gravity. Okay, that's kind of funny. So is kinematic means actually that it's not going to use gravity. Let's see if when we put a cube into the scene, let's say that we put a cube into the scene, I'm going to go into scene view here, and I'm going to go ahead and put a rigid body onto this cube, and I'm going to make that a 15 kilo rigid body. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and because is kinematic is not enabled on the Ragdoll, it will not detect collision with the collision with the box will not affect the rigid bodies on the skeleton. Okay, it still affects this box. Okay, so I can put is kinematic and nothing will happen now. So it on whatever rigid body is kinematic enabled, it's not going to detect collisions with other rigid bodies. Okay, so that's important. That's important. Let's just say that. Okay, so I'm going and exit play mode. So the important thing to take away here is that we have all these rigid bodies, and the most important thing on our Ragdoller script is to enable and disable these two things. Use gravity and is kinematic. Okay, so when our guy is animated, we want him to not have the ragdoll enabled. So we want him to be not using gravity and to be kinematic. We don't want collisions to happen with other rigid bodies while he's alive, basically. Okay, so that's what we want to put in our pseudocode is basically enable the ragdoll. Let's go ahead and disable the ragdoll. Okay, so right now, let's say that the ragdoll is disabled. So we have all these rigid bodies, and by having use gravity off and is kinematic on, it's essentially disabled. So all rigid bodies, okay, disable gravity, enable kinematic. Yeah. Right, that's for disabled. Okay, so essentially this is, we're gonna do the opposite. Oh, there it is. Okay, so we're essentially gonna do the opposite for the enable. So when we enable the ragdoll, we're going to enable gravity and disable kinematic. All right, so the reason I'm collapsing these down in this way is because we're talking about the ragdoll. We're going to get all of the rigid bodies on the ragdoll, and then for each of those rigid bodies, for each of those rigid bodies, we're going to disable the rigid body, this gravity, and the ability to be kinematic. Okay, so this is where you guys need to figure out how to do that. Okay, so I think it's a good idea for you guys to think about how you would do that using your own brain and not, this is something you can do. This is easy code to generate. I think you have to have a little bit of expertise to find out how the ragdoll wizard and all that stuff works. You kind of have to know Unity a little bit, but as far as doing something like this is really, really easy code. Okay, because this is all accessible. Let's go ahead and create the function public void enable rigid body, ragdoll. And we're gonna go ahead and put all of this in here. So let's just get one rigid body. All right, so that's to enable gravity. We can see on the rigid body all this stuff that we can do with it, all these properties and stuff that we can use. I can find gravity by just typing in grav. Okay, so use gravity. This is a Boolean property that we can get and set from here. Okay, so this is going to be, I think, public. If I press F12, I can look at all the stuff on rigid body. So this is a public bool, and I can get that and set it publicly. Okay, so if I want to enable the ragdoll, I want to enable gravity. So all I have to do is press is true, is set that to is true. Okay, so the reason that it's giving me this red line underneath is because this has not been set to anything. So if I find a rigid body, I can say find object of type rigid body, and if that's not null, we can do this with the use gravity. Okay, so again, now this isn't ideal. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that. So again, it's important that you guys learn how to do this on your own. So you figure out how to do the same thing with disabling kinematic. and then you create the function, and you can basically copy and paste. So let's say enable, make sure we close our braces here. We want to change this to disable ragdoll. Okay, so we're going to get all of our rigid bodies. Let's go ahead and copy. That's not a good thing to copy. All right, so I'm going to copy that. Grab my rigid body, and I'm going to say, okay, disable gravity. All we have to do is set that to false. Okay, I'll give you guys a minute, pause the video, whatever, and now I'm going to go ahead and show you exactly how to do this. Okay, so it's important that you actually put this onto your character, right? So let's go ahead and set a serialized field for a game object, which is our character object. This is where we're going to get all of our rigid bodies from. Okay, so what we want to do is get all of the rigid bodies on this character object. So let's go ahead and say, let's get an array of rigid bodies, call these RBs, and we'll say equals character object dot get components in children of type rigid body, and that is a function. Okay, so now we're going to act on each of those rigid bodies. Now some people would use the for each var rigid body in, but I like to use for RB's length because it's slightly more efficient. Okay, you're gonna see that we enable and disable the ragdoll in runtime, so wherever you can save some time, I think it's a good idea to do so. I'm going to go ahead and tuck all of this into my for loop. My current rigid body, you don't have to necessarily do it like this, but my current rigid body is RBs at I. Okay, so this is just saying, as we iterate over this rigid body array, I'm going to grab the one here, and for simplicity's sake, I want to set that into the RB rigid body so that I don't have to say RB's I every time. Okay, not a big difference. You're losing a little bit of memory, but I think it's worth it for readability. Okay, so let's disable kinematic. So we go to RB kinematic is kinematic equals false, and we're doing the exact same thing for disable, but we're reversing the actions that we're performing. So we are enabling kinematic and we are disabling gravity. So use gravity equals false and is kinematic equals true. Not what I wanted. Okay, perfect. Now, we need something in order to activate the script. Okay. Let's go ahead and press save. I'm going to go ahead and pop this onto my script. I'm going to pop this onto my guy, so I need to exit the search. I'm going to go ahead and put this directly onto where we have our rigid body stuff. We'll put it here, and actually the character object, let's make sure that you put that as your main object so that it actually goes and gets the components in the children, because I'm not sure that it gets the component on where the script exists. Okay, so make sure that you put the character object into this character object field, set that, and let's go ahead and just do this all at once. Let's go ahead and go into UI. We're going to go into game object UI, create a button. So we'll go into the canvas and make sure that we can actually see the button. On the canvas scaler, we're going to scale with screen size and set that to 1920 by 1080. That's a full HD screen. And our button, we're just going to pop it, make it bigger and put it into the middle here. We're going to create a second button, put it over here. The enable, let's call it the enable button. And the disable button. Now the disable button right now is going to be pretty useless. Really, it's the enable button that'll be useful. Okay, so we're gonna just say enable ragdoll in the text section here. I'm gonna go ahead and make sure that the font size is at best fit. Put it there, and the enable button, any button has on click, and we're going to add a listener, and on that listener we're going to put our ragdoller text. Okay, so I'm going to grab our enable button, and I'm going to put where my script exists. Okay, so it's on the hips, so I'm going to grab that ragdoller script. I'm going to say enable ragdoll. So when I click on this button, I'm going to enable the ragdoll. Okay, at start, let's go ahead and put that in here. Let's say at start, we want our ragdoll to be disabled. So let's go ahead and just disable the ragdoll at start. Okay, press play. Sorry, we'll save the scene first. I want to make sure that I'm going to go ahead and press T and colon and search for all the rigid bodies in the scene. Rigid body. Search for all the rigid bodies in the scene. I'm going to go ahead and put those back to their standard. I'm going to use gravity and disable as kinematic. Okay, so if it weren't for this method here, disable ragdoll, this guy would collapse just like we saw before. Okay, and I'm going to delete the disable button because we don't need it. All right, so let's see what happens. Press play, nothing should happen to the guy, all right? And then I'm gonna go ahead and click on enable ragdoll, and he ragdolls. What a surprise. Okay, perfect. All right, I feel like we've already had a lot of fun. We're gonna have a little bit more fun here. I think that this would be nothing if it weren't for some functionality of shooting a bad guy, okay? So the idea of this whole thing is to shoot the guy and then he dies and collapses, all right? So I think it might be important actually to have maybe an animator on this guy even, so that he has like some idle animation, and then just shoot him from there. Okay, so let's go back to Mixamo. I'm gonna go ahead and pull up Google and hope there's no nasty stuff on there. Let's go to Mixamo again and go to the animation section now, and we're gonna go for idle. I'm just gonna type idle into here, and let's just say breathing idle. Let's see what he looks like when he's breathing. Perfect, looks good to me. We're going to go ahead and do it without the skin. We're going to have a uniform keyframe reduction. We're going to have let's go ahead and keep 60 frames per second, and download this as an FBX for Unity. Okay, go ahead and download that. These are pretty heavy files. So if you don't want to do this, I mean, you can do this without using animations, but I think it's a little bit more fun when you do use animations. Okay, so I have idle, excuse me, and then I'm gonna get a hit animation just because I think that makes things more fun. Looks like a lot of these are where the guy's got his hands up or something like that. So it's not like, maybe this one would work. All right, so yeah, that's not great because our guy, oh, this is perfect. So he's standing and then he gets hit. Perfect. Okay, so what we want to do actually is see what it does with impact set to super high. Yeah, that's not great. Overdrive is where you're going to see that go faster. Okay, so that kind of, let's see what maximizing the angle does. Minimizing it. Let's see if that makes it go higher. How about we put it lower? Well, this isn't necessary, so you guys really don't have to waste too much time on this. It's not bad. It's not too bad. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and download that. You guys can freeze the frame and take a look at these parameters. I'm gonna download it. This will keep the parameters that I had used from before, so I'm gonna go ahead and download. And we're gonna drag and drop this from our downloads folder. So I'm not showing you my downloads folder. I'm gonna drag and drop my downloads into the prefabs directly on the project. And you'll see if you collapse these or open these, unfold these, whatever, that it gives you these two animations. So what I want to go ahead and do is enter my war zombie. I'm going to put an animator component onto him, and then I'm going to create a controller. Let's go down here to animator controller, and we'll call it zombie guy. Pretty good, good name. Okay, so in the animator component, while I have this clicked, I can actually see this will be this animator. Okay, so this animator tab is corresponding to the zombie guy animator controller. I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop my those two animations in there. So if you unfold, you see those triangles, that's the animation. You can just drag and drop that directly into the animator tab, and that'll create a new state for you. So he's gonna be breathing until you shoot him, okay? So we're gonna create a trigger called hit, really simple. And then I'm gonna create a transition from breathing idle to getting hit. And then on my conditions, I'm gonna set that to hit. And I'm gonna lose the exit time, and I'm going to move this all the way down so that there's no wait between the transition. There's no transition wait time. So I want him to go straight from breathing to being hit, okay? So if we click on the guy, we'll actually, I think, see a model. Or we can just drag him in there. So press play. I think that actually has more to do with the getting hit animation not being super great. So let's take a look at that getting hit animation itself. No, it's pretty good. All right, so let's make sure that that transition is correctly working. Let's go ahead and remove any. Perfect. So it should just go directly from idle to getting hit. And then we'll have an exit time which is equal to the amount of however long that animation is, and he'll go back to breathing. Okay, so what I want to do is go ahead and pop that controller onto the animator component on my guy, and what I'll do is say let's just go and create a zombie script. This is not an ideal way of doing this. Okay, so I'm going to create a zombie, and I'm going to say that he's got a animator component on here. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in the animator component onto a Tor controller, call it null, and then we can just pop that in the inspector. If we forget to do that, we can do that on awake, and we'll just say if the controller is null. If you forgot to do that, and you actually did give him a animator component, then we can just say out controller, and this will set that controller field directly on there. Okay, so that actually we can do that like that. We can say if it's null and this doesn't work. So we can say that if you did forget to put the controller on him, then we'll just warn you of that. Warning. Name doesn't have an animator controller. Perfect. Okay. So what we want to do is say get hit, public get hit. So on my controller, I want to say controller.setTrigger, that trigger that we just set in the parameters, we're going to say hit. It's a lowercase hit. We're just going to set the trigger to get hit. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and create another button, and we're going to activate that get hit via the button first. I'm going to look at my guy, and I'm going to set that controller on there. And then I am going to create another button. So I'm going to go into 2D. I'm going to go into my canvas, and then I'm going to create a button, and I'm going to delete the previous listener. I'm going to call this button the hit button. And I'm going to change the text to hit zombie. Okay, and now my action is going to be from that zombie script. I'm going to say get hit, and hopefully this will work. Press save. I'm going to go ahead and look at my guy and go into the game. I'm going to hit my zombie. He gets hit again, and let's just say he died. So enable ragdoll no longer works. And why is that? Because he's being animated. Okay. So what do we have to do? There's two things. There's two ways that we can do this. All right. So we can make a modification to the ragdoller. I don't want to do that because I think that my script is already doing as much as it should. I don't want it to handle anything else. I could have it handle something else. I could say, upon becoming a ragdoll, what should we do? Okay, I could add an event. However, I don't think that's the right way to do this. What I really want to do is kill the zombie and then say, okay, once the zombie is killed, what should we do? What should happen to the zombie? So let's go ahead and do this. All right. Ideally, you have like a health component on your guy, on your characters. All right, let's go ahead and do this that way. Let's just say health component. Let's call it health, I guess. All right, I'm going to do this the simplest way possible. I'm going to do this the simplest way possible. We're going to create a private do float. Yeah, let's do float health equals 100. We're going to do public void take damage float amount, and we're going to say health minus equals amount. If our health is less than or equal to 0, then we want to die. Okay, and we haven't created that, but if we press Control and then the period, we can generate the method, and we can just throw a message to the console for now, I'm dead. Now, this will not change anything. This will not do anything for us as far as making the ragdoll work and stuff like that. So what we want to do, really, I think we'll just do this right now since we're already in the script. We're going to go ahead and copy this using Unity Engine, and then we're going to add events. All right. So what I'm going to do is create an event called field. I'm going to create a Unity event called onDie. Go ahead and set that. So onDie, and I'm going to make sure that it's actually, this question mark means that if it has listeners, then we will invoke the methods that those listeners call. Okay. There's one more thing that we have to do. Okay. So I'm just going to show you why we put this event on here. Okay. So now we have a health component. When he dies, we want to enable our ragdoll. Remember, our ragdoller script is on the hips, so we're going to go ahead and put the hips on here, and then we're going to call upon our ragdoller script to enable the ragdoll. We can actually do this from here. So what we can do is disable the animator from here. So the animator is what was keeping this guy where he was, keeping him from being a ragdoll. Okay, so now what I want to do with my hit button is also go into the health component of my guy and say remove some of that health. Let's see if we can actually access that. Take damage. Perfect. All right, so we're going to take damage. He's going to take 40 damage, so it'll take 3 hits in order for him to die. And we'll actually see his health go down as we click that button. So let's press play, save, and then press play. And we will watch that as we press this hit zombie button, his health will go down by 40. Perfect. Down by 40 again. And now he's going to die, and the ragdoll should enable. Oh my goodness, that's beautiful. Okay. So that's perfect. He's already dead. He's already had his ragdoll enabled, but he continues to take health damage. It's not super ideal. What we can do to prevent that is here you can just say if health is already less than, if he's already dead basically, if health is less than or equal to 0, just return. And that'll prevent him from taking extra damage. Why you want to do that, this part, is because if you don't do that, he continues to take the damage, yeah, but you're also calling all of the stuff on this event, okay? So after he's already dead and you're clicking that button again, you're doing all this extra damage to him, you're doing all this overkill, you're also wasting CPU cycles calling these methods again, okay? So you kill him, and then you kill him again and again and again and again, and you go into that ragdoll script and you're iterating all over these rigid bodies over and over again. Okay, so things to keep in mind. All right, let's do one more thing. We're gonna do one more thing. All right, I know this video is going long, but we're gonna do one more thing. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a fun video. I am going to create a text on the screen. I'm going to put it in the middle of the screen. So I'm going to put it in the middle of the screen. I stretch. Let's go and put this in game. Okay. So the text is just going to be a plus sign. I'm going to make it red. It's just kind of easy to see. And you can see it's a little tiny dot right there. So I'm going to increase the size to best fit and just put it at 256 or so. And then I'm going to expand it. So I have this at stretch. And we have it right now where it's set to be on the left side of the screen. So I'm going to put it in the middle and in the middle right there. It's a little bit too big. So let's put that maybe down to 56. That's perfect. And I'm going to rotate my camera just slightly so that I'm pointing at my zombie. All right, I'm going to aim just a little bit up. Right at his chest, right at his heart, all right? And I'm gonna make a gun, okay? So we're gonna create a little gun here, super simple gun. It's just gonna fire rays. And I'm gonna put all these scripts into the scripts folder. All right, we're gonna go into the scripts folder and we're going to enter we're gonna enter the gun script, and on the update method, we're going to say if I click input dot get mouse button down 0, that's the left mouse, we're going to fire the gun. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a method called fire gun. Make this really simple. Really simple. We don't even care about ammo or anything like that. We're going to print a message, bang. And we're going to fire a ray if physics.raycast. Let's create a ray. The ray is going to be from the camera, screen point array, and it's going to go just straight forward. Sorry if I'm making this hard for you guys. Okay, so let's just do this from an origin. We're going to start from the camera.main position, transform.position, and go camera.main.transform.forward. So we're firing forward from the camera up to 100 meters, and we need to have a raycast hit fired with that so that we can get some information. All right, so I think that comes before, yeah. So in this, we need to put that before here and good. Okay, so we're going to fire a ray from our camera and it's going to go out, and if it hits something, then we're going to check. Make a check. Did we hit a health component? If the collider that we hit has a health component, health, then we're going to say health.take damage. We're going to go ahead and put some damage onto this gun. Float damage equals 25. Perfect, that works for me. You can change that in the inspector, and we're just going to put damage there. And it's the serializable from system, serialized field, so we can see it in the inspector. All right, so if we click, we're going to fire the gun. It's going to say bang, and we're going to fire a ray cast from the camera out forward. And we hit something with a health component. That health component is going to take damage. Good, good. So far, so good. So I'm going to go ahead and eliminate the hit button so that we don't accidentally click that and do damage via that. I'm going to save the scene. I'm going to press play, and I should be aiming at my zombie. Boom, boom. Okay, it's not... I'm shooting, but it's not working because I've always obviously made a mistake with my ray casts, or what's happening. Okay, so what's happening is I'm not checking that it's hitting a component, it's hitting a collider, but it's not hitting a collider that has that component. So what I'm going to do is say if hit.transform.root. So if the root component has health, then we're going to give it deliver damage to it. Okay. So bang, bang, bang. Should have done 75 damage. Yes. Okay. So he is now taking damage. Bang one more time. He's dead. Oh, how dramatic. Perfect. Okay. So what I want to do now, and I know this is getting long, but we're almost at the end here. I'm going to go to my GitHub, and we're going to go to the scene view camera, and we want this camera. We're just going to create a C# script scene view. What do we call it? Grab that here. Scene light camera. Okay. Scene light camera, there we go. Okay, enter that script. And then we're just gonna copy everything on there. Perfect, and paste. So this is gonna allow us to move around in the scene while the, put that scene light camera on there. So change rotation, zoom speed. So I'll show you what that does. This allows us to move in play mode like we do in scene mode. So I can rotate around and stuff like that. I can, let's go ahead and click on this guy. We'll see that he gets hit. So let's, in our health script, what I want to do is also say that when I take damage, I'm going to go ahead and trigger an event on take damage. And so what we're going to do is say if he dies, we'll go ahead and trigger die. Otherwise, he's still alive, and we're just going to call on take damage and invoke that. And what we want to do here is go ahead and enter that new event and say when he takes damage, go ahead and call the get hit function on zombie. So now we don't have to click on any buttons or anything like that. So let's go ahead and shoot him. He gets hit. Ouch. Oh my goodness. Oh, bang, dead. All right. Last thing, and I swear to you guys, is the last thing. If we kill this guy, we want to say if he's dead now, So we do have to have access to this. We're just going to go ahead and create a public bool is alive, and that's going to be health is greater than 0. If he's alive, if his health is greater than 0, he's alive. Okay, so we're going to go in here and say if health, and this is where we find that is alive. If he's not alive, and the collider that we hit has a rigid body on it, rigid body, RB, we're going to add some force to that rigid body. So add force, and the force is going to actually be the direction from which we fired the shot. So what we're going to do is we can just do it from the camera.main.transform.forward. Okay, so that's going to give it a vector, and we're going to give it a little bit of force. Let's say 100 meters per second, and we're going to do the force mode is impulse. Add force, and that's it. Perfect. Good. So really what I'm trying to do here is say, okay, we're going to damage our guy, and then if he's not alive anymore after damaging him, and he has a collider and he has a rigid body on the collider that we hit, then we're going to add force to that collider. So let's try working that. Boom, boom, bang, and boom, he's dead. Oh, that was a nice little force there. Bang, 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 bang. Perfect. Nice. Okay. Okay, so guess what? I lied about that last thing being the last thing. Let's go back into the gun here real quickly, and I'm going to show you. I changed that force from being a magic value where I just put it at 100. I changed that to a field on the gun. So in our gun script, I added the force field. It's a float. And it's just magnifying the direction from which the shot is coming. And what that allows me to do is if I kill a guy, let's say I shoot him in the leg, it might flip him over, or it just adds like a better feedback. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in like 2 more of these guys. I think this is fun. So I'm just pressing Control D to duplicate these guys. I'm moving around with the transform gizmo, with the movement gizmo, move tool, excuse me. And I'm going to press play, and I'm going to go to my camera and just show you that my force right now is at 250. Okay. So what happens if I get a headshot? Let's say he flips like that. Now if I get a leg shot, it moves his leg like that. So it's a little bit more fun if you do it in that way, and that works even. All right, that's pretty funny. That works even if those guys are dead. So where we're adding that force, remember, is from the gun, because if the guy's already dead, we can still act upon him. We're not going to, where in the health component we have this where it says if you're dead, don't do all this stuff. Okay, he's no longer doing the on-take damage stuff. Instead, what's happening is I'm saying from the gun, if he's dead, I can still act upon those rigid bodies, so I should be able to move him around even though he's dead. Okay, and I think that makes that a lot more fun. So as I promised, we're going to take a look at how to do this with animals as well. So I brought in these 2 animals. I got animals from low poly animated animals from PolyPerfect. So I brought in the pig because that has a suitable skeleton for what we're looking for. So if I take a look at this pig, I can see that it has geometry in main. I believe main is where I can find its hips, its legs, knees, etc. Okay, so this has a setup very similar to that of our human zombie guy. And if I take a look at what that skeleton looks like, you can see that it's pretty much what I need. So I've got the leg and the knee and the foot here. Then I've got the spine, the mid spine. So you might see that they're under different names, but they essentially work the same. So we've got the head, and then the scapulae and arms, etc. Okay, so let's take a look at the right side just so that we know what we're dealing with. Right, so this would be our arm and this would be our elbow, okay, or forearm, whatever. Okay, so we can set that up with the pig. I've also got a free asset called the goat. I don't know. Let's see what company makes this. Ursa Animation makes this. So this is free on the asset store. I'll post a link in the description. This has a similar skeleton. The names are very different, but it has the hips. It has the right hips, etc. So you can see as I unfold these and go down, you can see that they have all the joints that we need. So I'm going to set up both of these as quickly as I can. I'm going to go into game object just as we did with our human. I'm going to go to 3D object in Ragdoll, and we're going to set this up first with the goat. So the root is on the floor. We don't want that. We want the pelvis for the hips, or the pelvis for the pelvis. Rump here will be the let's see, the hips. Let's say that hip joint is actually going to be the hips. I think they've done that pretty well as far as following the Unity standard for setting up a ragdoll. So we go hips to hips, knee to knee, and then for foot we'll just put in the ankle. And then to find the arms, remember we have to unfold the spine, okay? So the rump front, I guess that would be the shoulder or whatever you call it in an animal. So we got the left side here. This is about the shoulder, I guess. And then we see that that's about where the elbow would be for a human. So let's just take the hip here and put that into the left arm, and then we'll take the knee and put that into the elbow. And we'll do that for the right side as well. So hip where the arm is, and knee where the elbow is. Mid spine, we'll call that spine 2. And the head will be under the neck. So we've got 2 neck joints, and then we'll find the head there. I think total mass, whatever, 1 is fine, 20 is fine, and we'll set the strength as 1. All right, so what I want to do is go ahead and click on the goat to see what his colliders are going to look like. Now, I don't have box colliders collapse. You can see all the capsule colliders, and you can see that there's some self-intersecting collisions here. And remember that you want to fix that before you start the game, because once you create a ragdoll that has intersecting colliders, they'll like bounce off of each other, as I said before. So make sure that you collapse these just a little bit, and we want to make sure that we have our boxes uncollapsed so that we know what that's looking like. So this one looks like it's not big at all. Okay, so that's going laterally as I open that. So I'm going to go ahead and make this a little bit bigger like this. And then I'm going to go back up to the hips and make sure that there's no self-collision there. Let's go into orthographics mode so that we see the lines in straight lines. And let's go ahead and lift that up and cover a little bit more of the body so that when we shoot it or whatever, we make sure that he's actually getting hit. So there's going to be a bit of a problem with this spine 2, this middle spine, because it does, I mean, it's at an angle, so I mean, not a huge deal, but it's, depending on the animation state, it's probably going to intersect with this. So I'm just going to leave it like that, all right? And as far as the legs, very minor adjustments here, very, very minor. So this is the front. I'm just going to lift that slightly, and on the other front, I'm going to lift that slightly. Do the same thing for the back joints. Let's see if that's on the hip, perfect. And the right hip joint, let's make sure that those aren't intersecting, because you can see that that was intersecting with the top of this one. Okay, so let's go ahead and put our ragdoller on here. I'm just going to put it on the main body. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so this will grab all of the rigid bodies and colliders, excuse me, just the rigid bodies that fall under the goat, and it will work with that. And then I'm going to put a health component on here, and I don't want to do any take damage because I don't have an animation for that, and I'm not sure that this guy does. He does not come with an animation for being hit. So I'm just going to go to on die, and remember that when he dies, if he has the animator working, then the ragdoller will not work. So what we want to do is disable the animator, and we want to enable ragdoll. So we go into our ragdoll script and enable ragdoll. Let's just make sure that that works. We'll get our gun here. We're going to save the scene real quickly. I'm going to point my gun at the goat and see what happens. He gets shot and he is a ragdoll. Okay, you can see that the skin mesh isn't the greatest. Got a lot of sensitivity here, but that's fine. Okay, so the ragdoll isn't the greatest for the goat. We're gonna do the same thing with the pig. Okay, so we're gonna go into the pig. We're gonna go game object, 3D object, ragdoll, and then we're gonna set up the hips again. All right, so I'm gonna say root M for this guy is the pelvis. Our left hips are back here. So let's go. Just make sure that that's what we want. I'm not sure if I want to put that on the toes or on the... So actually I'm going to take the knee and put that as the hips, and then I'll take the ankle and put that as the knee, and the toes and put that as the foot, because I think those fall into the places a little bit better than hip, knee, and ankle. All right, and then I go down the spine, and I'm going to find his scapulae, and I am going to find, let's go elbow for arm and wrist for elbow. And if this isn't correct, we can just remove all this and do it again. It's not a huge deal, all right? And we'll go chest for middle spine, and then we'll find the head on this fella, and we will put that in there. I'm going to say that my pig's a little bit fatter than the goat, so I'm giving him 30 kilos of mass and a strength of 1, and I create that. So we'll take a look at our pig, and we can see it's got a character controller, so that's why we see that gizmo. Okay, so the pig, he's got some intersection right here. I'm not going to waste too much more of your guys' time, so I'm gonna try and get through this as quickly as possible and just change that middle spine. That's that middle spine that we see there, that collider. So we're going to bring that up so it's not only not colliding with the legs, but also not colliding with the main hips. This one's also not very well set up, so let's go like this and make sure it's not colliding with the back legs, and then we'll give them a little bit more. There you go, perfect. Okay, so let's go to the pig again. To set up this ragdoll, it's very simple. You put the ragdoll script that we made, you put the character object in there, and then we need a health component again, and when we die, of course, we need to turn off the animator, otherwise it will animate a dead corpse. And then we need to plug in our ragdoll, and on the ragdoll script, call enable ragdoll. So let's save again, and we're going to go in here with our gun, and we're going to shoot the pig. Unfortunately, okay. So I want to say, I'm going to take a little force off my gun. I'm going to take a little force off my gun to see if that fixes what that looks like. I think that looks slightly better. It looks, I'm not sure if it's self-collision, but you can see that it's got kind of a goofy animation there. I'm going to increase the size of, the head collider just to see if that fixes anything. I don't think it will necessarily. I'm going to pause real quick. He's already dead and he's already in motion. So let's just increase the size of the head and then see what that does. That actually does a great job. I think his head, because it wasn't touching the floor, made it look not so good. As far as it might get the same effect a little bit with the goat, I'm not sure. But that looks good. I think that looks good, and that's how you do that with an animal. So let's take a quick review of everything that we've done here. We brought in a character. We made sure that that character has a skeleton, which includes hips, legs, spine, under which the head and arms exist. So when we have those kind of skeletons, we can go into game object and 3D object, ragdoll, use the ragdoll wizard to plug and, you know, drop in and plug in those body parts, and it will automatically give us some colliders. Now, if we go into scene view and we take a look at our zombie, you'll see that sometimes you have self-colliding colliders. You'll have colliders that collide with very near colliders, and that will create some issues. We'll just take a look real quickly at what that does. So I'm looking at the right shoulder here. I'm going to go ahead and expand that capsule collider so that it's colliding with itself, and we'll see if that will show us what one of the problems that I was talking about, where it'll kind of bounce once he dies. Actually, it's not that bad, but it is constantly calling. So in Unity, when you're using colliders, you're just constantly calling to see if your colliders are colliding with something. So there is a collision that's occurring there, and that's taking up CPU cycles every time that collision happens. Okay, so let's just take a look at that really quickly. Okay, I guess not really quickly because the zoom doesn't work that great. Okay, so this is calling a collision here. So anytime that you have a on collision enter, on collision exit, on collision stay with the rigid body, it's calling collisions right now. So really that's not ideal, and it'll affect your performance if you have a lot of colliders that are doing that. Not a huge deal if you got one guy whose colliders are doing that. What's more is now you can see that his arm bends in a way that we kind of have come to expect from a ragdoll, where if it were how it was before, if it were self-colliding, sometimes it doesn't bend as much as, right? So you see that it doesn't bend as well as, well, okay, maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, okay. So that's one of the things that we did today. Another thing is we created the health component on these guys. The health component is the way that we are, this is how we are killing how we're enabling our ragdoll, okay? So I put the ragdoll script here. You can put it on your main object, and it's not going to make a difference, okay? So you can see I move that ragdoller onto the main object, and you can see that when I start the scene and I shoot this guy and kill him, if I remember to put the thing back into the into that event, okay, on the on die event, I call ragdoller and enable ragdoll, and that will work, okay, even if it's on the main object or even if it's on his arm or elbow or whatever, okay? You just need to call that ragdoller enable ragdoll script, and it doesn't matter where it is on the body. If you have the character object set up properly, it's going to go through all of the components that are children to that character object and search for rigid bodies, because the rigid bodies are what allow the ragdoll to work, okay? Any other issues? Let's see. If your ragdoll isn't working, make sure that when you enable the ragdoll that you're not still animating your guy. What you might also have happen is, let's say that we have, let's see if I can use a wander script on here. I've got a, I'm not sure if that'll work. So what might happen is you might have like a nav mesh agent on your guy, and then you tell your guy to move over there, okay? And if you're ragdolled, if you're in your ragdoll already, let's say he's already dead. Okay, this won't work because we don't have a nav mesh set up anyway. Well, let's say that you had a nav mesh set up and this guy had a move order to move over to the corner here, and he dies. This will continue to work unless you say on die, turn off the nav mesh agent. Okay, so make sure that you disable any components that you want to disable when the guy dies. You don't want him moving around as a corpse, probably. I mean, even that's what a zombie is, but just make sure that if that's your goal, is to turn off movement, make sure you do that when the guy dies, okay? So that should be it. Find a way to call, enable Ragdoll, and disable your animators and any other unwanted components when your guy dies. And that should be it. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you next time.